in lieu of not being able to go to shows for a long time, shows and concerts. Who knows when it'll be? Might be the fall. Might be even beyond that. We thought of a segment that each one of us comes up with 3 or 4 different tours or bands touring off an album, or it could be a band touring from a certain year that we would pay $1,000 to see. So, for example, this isn't one of mine, but an example would be I would love to see Metallica tour off the Black Album right before it released because they played this specific venue that I love and Anthrax opened, and then so we're going to do it like a round robin style and basically defend our choices. And then once we give our spiel, the other two of us will just kind of shoot the shit on it and comment on it. So I don't know what the segment's called, but just Tour Dream,
Tour Dreams.
Tour Dreams.
Tour Time Machine.
Tour Time Machine.
Yeah,
I like that.
I have one on here that happened before all of us were born. So actually 2, if you look at one of my honorable mentions. There's a, and some of it you might actually need to get into a plane too and fly somewhere. So it's not necessarily where you're at.
Tour Time Machine. I like that. Yeah. And we may revisit this in future episodes, but given the climate,
up 3 or 4 was hard. I could have had 10 or 15. So.
Exactly. So given the climate now that there's no live music for the foreseeable future, this is a fun time to do this. So, who wants to start?
All right, Twan, you ready? You ready to put your?
Yeah, I'm ready. Yeah. So we'll start with this one. So Rage Against the Machine. Self-titled album. So you got to figure this is 92, 93.
Yep.
I did some nerding out, did some homework here. So
nice.
It was club venues.
Yep.
So think of the time frame. Self-titled's out. Evil Empire's not out yet. Evil Empire was 95, 96. So self-titled club venues. I looked it up. In January of 93, they played the Paradise in Boston. If you've ever been to the Paradise, it's under 1,000 people.
Tiny.
It's a club venue.
Is that place still open?
It is still open.
Because I know the Avalon and the Axis is no longer. And
those are gone.
That's a 500 venue because that comes up for me a little later.
In the Paradise, so they played the Paradise in January of 93. A month before that, they played in West Hollywood, Nate, in your kind of neck of the woods at the Whiskey A Go Go.
Oh, wow.
In December 92. So the time frame... It was like that time frame. So you got to figure all their set. And I looked up their set list. Their set list was all self-titled, but they played the early workings of People of the Sun.
Oh,
so wow. That's cool.
So that hadn't dropped. So Evil Empire hadn't dropped yet.
Yep.
Another angle I had was Zach was coming off of playing with Inside Out. So he was the frontman for Inside Out. They had the No Spiritual Surrender record off Revelation. More hardcore punk. But he was his angriest when he was in Inside Out. If you listen to those albums, it's the angst is just wild. So I figure coming off that, he's probably the angriest he was ever going to be with Rage.
Yep.
During that tour, because they were just playing out.
Well, and even if you listen to the lyrics from that first album, there's some angry
stuff there.
Yeah.
And the other big thing, which ties into the club venue, is once Evil Empire hit, all bets were off. You were seeing them in massive venues.
Yeah.
And, of course, who they played with would have been cool to see. Like they played a lot with like Beastie Boys and whatnot. But for those club venues, damn.
They played 13 dates with U2 in 1997.
Oh, so was this one of yours?
Yeah, well, I didn't do them. No.
Oh, you didn't do them?
Because I had a feeling that mine was Evil Empire, but I was like, too big. Would have wanted to see them in the smaller venues. I don't know if I want to go down the self-titled, but not to steal your thunder, but they did. They played with U2 for 13 shows in 1997.
And for me, the size of the venue is so key with them because my favorite Rage album is Evil Empire.
Same.
But to see them on that album, they were on MTV. I remember seeing Bulls on Parade video on MTV, so those venues are huge. And it's just a whole different experience. So to see them touring off self-titled, in that Boston Paradise show was during the third leg of the North American tour. So they toured the hell out of that album.
Wow.
Yeah. Were they playing Wake Up?
I'd have to look.
I would imagine that's a tough song for any vocalist, just the end of it.
Oh, yeah.
But
Yeah.
my when I was looking, I was like, were they playing Wake Up? Because I want to hear Wake Up. And nope, they weren't playing Wake Up on the Evil Empire stuff. So it's like that's another kind of strike against it for me. Not that I wouldn't want to see them then. Obviously, I've never seen them. You guys have seen them. So I would love to have seen them whenever. With U2, would have been wild. It would have been a massive show. It would have been two completely different fan bases. Like,
Yeah, that's
I don't
interesting.
even know how that worked for 13 shows.
I like blended shows, but that's a big
It's a weird one.
polar opposites.
Yeah,
Definitely.
Well, that was U2 on the Pop Mart tour.
Yep, it was. Yep. Which, I mean, that was what were they playing? Discotheque, and just didn't fit with Rage. It was just such a weird mashup. I was like, this happened? I don't remember this.
But two incredibly standalone bands, so that is really cool.
One.
And to your point, Twan, the first time I really got into Rage, I think actually was more so on the Evil Empire, and I revisited the self-titled. So 96, so we were in middle school.
Yep.
So
Same
I
for
had
me.
gotten that album in my hand somehow.
5th grade for me.
4/16/96 that came out, which would have been the end of our 5th grade year.
But I remember seeing footage of Rage Against the Machine playing live. I think we kind of talked about this in the last episode, but everything that I ever saw, which was on VHS
Yes.
at a friend's house and my friend's brother playing it on the VHS, was like Rage Against the Machine playing like Pink Pop and like these huge festivals in Europe where it's like 100,000 people jumping up and down. So that was my impression of Rage Against the Machine, is not only this like really intense band, but like this powerhouse of a live performance. So to see them in a club just getting started, but still that same exact energy, they just hadn't reached that capacity yet. It's really no different. They're the same band. They're just playing to a larger audience. But that energy, it's probably always been there. And so to see that in a place like Paradise, man, that's a really tiny club.
Would have just been absolutely insane. Especially if you knew at all familiar with any of the music, you'd been like, this is going to be awesome.
And the thing is with the Paradise is the layout, it's like a rectangle. It reminds me of Hampton Beach, like a small Hampton Beach where it's a rectangle where there's no bad spot to be at. So it just, for me, it's like dream venue, dream band.
Yep.
Not ideal in terms of set lists because I love Evil Empire, but those factors that I just mentioned make up for it.
Absolutely.
And I actually have a bootleg VHS tape that I got at this record store in New Hampshire probably 12 or 13 years ago, and I want to dig it up because I think it's around this time frame. The quality's terrible, but it's I might dig that up. I still have it for sure.
That is a piece of nerdery right there, folks.
Yeah.
What you got, man?
All right. Let's see here. It shows Deftones touring for Around the Fur in '98. Super cool time for the new metal scene. It's kind of a weird term, new metal, but they were touring with bands like Limp Bizkit, Incubus, Head PE, some Slipknot dates in there, Cold Chamber. That whole scene, like before it exploded, maybe like 1.5 years later, obviously became the scene that we know as new metal, where everything on Ozfest, all these really cool bands that became ginormous. Limp Bizkit, obviously, we talked about them last time. Huge. Slipknot, huge. Incubus, huge in their own right. And Deftones, interestingly enough, not on that huge, massive selling amphitheater level, which is probably why I love them, because they're able to stay organic, genuine, and still play theaters and stuff. And they'll play like co-headlining gigs at big arenas and stuff like that once in a while. But to be there at those gigs would have been so cool, because it's my favorite Deftones album, and super diverse record, and the energy behind that band. Obviously, Chi, the bassist we referred to earlier, hadn't passed away yet, so you had a full lineup. They were super young, and I think that was kind of, even though their first record did pretty well, I mean, this is their second release on a major on Maverick Records. I feel like that's probably where they really, got the wind in their sails, and they've been kind of a cult following band ever since. But I look at those dates, those lineups, those set lists, and man, I would have been at as many of those shows as humanly possible, because it would have been just so cool to see not only them, but the bands that they were coming up with. They were kind of all friends for that era, and they're still going today. It's fantastic band.
Yep.
And
so Nate, can I piggyback on that?
Yeah,
we
100%.
we can do a combined one here. So
Nice.
my next one was Deftones 96, 97 era. So touring
Oh,
off
wow.
touring off Adrenaline
Wow.
Okay.
with
Very
probably some Around the Fur mixed in. So
Yeah.
if it's
Yep.
before the album comes out.
Yep.
Other angles were all in the early 20s, super energetic. Chino, like in 2020, he can still hit a lot of those screams and notes, but he was fresh back then. And then just for fun, I looked up in that 95 to 97 era some of the tours they were on.
Mm-hmm.
One of them was the War of Gargantua's tour, which was Deftones, Pantera, White Zombie, and I Hate God.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Another one was Deftones, Snapcase, and Orange 9mm. And this one would have been pretty cool too. 1995, Stomping Around the World tour. Deftones, Anthrax, Life of Agony from New York, and Monster Magnet.
Oh wow.
So
Oh, man.
a lot of those bands are actually still at it, but
Yeah.
what jumped out to me was just the diversity. Like, I Hate God's like a thrash band who I actually saw last year. Snapcase is a hardcore punk band. Life of Agony was like New York hardcore. Anthrax, thrash. Monster Magnet, kind of like industrialist rock, I guess.
Like stoner rock.
Yeah. But yeah, just piggybacking on that. So I think the punchline is anything around that time frame,
Yeah.
you couldn't go wrong with Deftones.
Oh, no.
Especially
I look
not
at
if you were
I
a
look
fan of
back
the
at
genre.
I look back at the mid to late 90s all the time and just have just so much regret, like nerd, geek regret on.
But we were 10.
Man, if I just had my license, I would have been at all these
Yeah,
gigs,
yeah.
easily. Because I was already looking at them on Polestar and stuff, just being like, man, I wish I could get to this gig. I'd have no way to get there. Not as far back as 98, but definitely stuff in 99. But 97, 96, like, holy crap. That Pantera... White Zombie Deftones tour. I did see that on a set list or something, and I think they played Lewiston, Maine on that tour.
Wow.
Lewiston
been
used to get
incredible.
shows back in the
Yeah.
mid '90s. Like they got shows. Lewiston was a venue, or a destination as far as some of these tours were concerned. Which, if you look at it now, Lewiston, Maine, like really. But I mean, it's in a Limp Bizkit song. He shouts
Yeah.
out at Lewiston, Maine. So it was a place that people would go to for
It's
for
bizarre,
shows. It
too.
also has one of the more iconic venues, just as far as venues in the country, the Coliseum where Muhammad Ali fought. So there is a place for that stuff to happen, and I've seen a show there, and I've been there for work for other things. But yeah, it's funny to hear Lewiston get brought up because it's just such a
Yeah.
tiny little
That's crazy.
East Coast town in a small state.
Yeah, and that arena is super shabby. I saw Green Day
No,
there
it's
in
cleaned up now. It's great now.
98.
No, they
Oh,
did a
it is?
really good
Okay.
job in there. Yeah, it's nice now.
So I did see a show there in that era.
that's
Was
right.
Green Day in 98 promoting Nimrod.
Yep.
I can't remember if Nimrod is out yet. But
I
It
feel
wasn't
like it
just Green
was.
Day, right? Wasn't there another band with them?
there was. I can't remember the
Wasn't
name.
Foos?
Huh?
Wasn't the Foos? They would have been on their own at that
No.
point.
It's on the tip of my tongue.
We also
uh,
went to another show there, Nate. We saw Weezer and The Fray there
Yep.
in 2005.
Mhm.
So
But
yeah, those Deftones
Awesome.
shows would have been very heavy and very,
Just
crowded,
raw.
sweaty.
Just raw. Yeah.
Pit. If you're looking to expel some energy, that would have been a place for you that time during that. I know we all went to Deftones in Bangor, Maine for a little festival they used to put on called Kabang for a buddy of our bachelor party. The three of us probably 8 or 9 years ago, and I remember I was in the pit for a solid, 3 minutes. Went kind of turned, just absolutely laid somebody out. It was a girl. I felt terrible. I grabbed her hand. I pulled her up. Like, I'm really sorry. She was like, no, you're cool. I shouldn't be in here. Like, all right, cool. I shouldn't be either because I'm now old. This is kind of out of where I should be at this point. So, but that was the only time I ever got to see Deftones. But I feel like that was a pretty fun set too. I think that was on. Were they out for Diamond
Diamond Eyes.
Eyes
That was
then,
Diamond
right?
Eyes.
Yeah. So.
Yep. But yeah, Nate. So I hijacked you a little bit. So did you have anything else on Around the Fur era?
it was kind of similar to what you were saying. It's like not only is it them in a different prime because they're always just on top of their game, but to be at that at that level at that time with touring with bands also coming up that are also, bands I admire and look up to, seeing them in that at that time must have been so cool. But man, I didn't think about the Adrenaline era because it's not not one of my most favorite Deftones albums. I revisit it once in a while, but for the most part, I'm still stuck on Around the Fur and a lot of the other albums. But yeah, man, I'm with you. I mean, I guess altogether, it's just one of those all-time nerd bands.
All right, I'll go. This will be my last one. We probably won't get too deep dive into this, but so Black Flag. So Black Flag during the Henry Rollins era, which was 81 to 85. So Black Flag was already a band at this point in time, and Henry Rollins was a fan. He would go to the shows. I don't know the history of their current singer leaving, but he joined the band, played a lot of shows with Minor Threat. But in his stint, they put out My War and Damaged, both during that era. And as much as I like Rollins as a musician, I actually probably like him as an author more. I have probably 12 of his books, and they're all like journal style, self-reflection, tour diaries and whatnot. But he has a book called Get in the Van, and he chronicles his time in Black Flag. And the reason why I picked this band, this era with him is a lot of those shows got shut down. It was like riots. The cover of the book has police in riot gear.
Wow.
So that would have been pretty wild to see. And if I were to pick an age, I would have wanted to be a teenager because you're just naive, just dumb enough to want to be in the middle of it and not know any better. And yeah, just have a little more tolerance for shenanigans and whatnot.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But yeah, not too much. And yeah, they played with Minor Threat during that time. So a lot of those like DC bands, Discord Records bands.
Fugazi?
Well, this was pre-Fugazi because Ian Mackay of
They're like late
Minor
80s,
Threat was a singer of Fugazi. They were after Minor Threat.
Yeah.
But actually, Fugazi's another band I would have liked to see. Here's a little nerd tip. Fugazi played the University of Southern Maine Gymnasium back in the 90s, right?
In Gorham?
I think in
Portland.
In Portland, yeah.
Oh, the Sullivan Gym there in Portland.
I think that's
nuts.
Yeah.
Because that's nuts. Not a very big gym at a small Division III school in Southern Maine. That's crazy.
And his whole thing was all ages and affordability, so it was probably $5. But yeah, Rollins, he was a madman. If you look on YouTube, there were I don't know I think it had to have been this era, but there's a live clip of him punching someone in the audience. Like, I don't know the context.
He was just punching him.
Yeah.
He was just wild, and it would have been amazing to see.
Yeah, the energy at those shows, I'm sure, was just off the charts. Especially, just that it just would have been crazy to be. Probably small venues.
Small venues.
Yeah. Yep.
All ages.
Wow.
Just wild. A
Yeah.
lot of energy. You get a younger crowd, you get a lot of energy. But just the riots, must have been crazy.
Wow. No, that's another cool example of someone, that was super punk rock and beating someone in the crowd, like beating someone up or whatever. And now Henry Rollins today is like this very polished, like you said, author,
intellect.
He does a lot of
It's funny what age will do.
Speaking and
Spoken word and stuff.
Spoken word.
You've seen him on spoken word tours too, right, Twan?
Seen him a couple times.
Yep.
I missed him for whatever reason when he came to Augusta. He did the Every State Capital tour a few years ago. Must have been maybe it was 2016 election year. But I saw him at the Space Gallery in Portland, Maine, which
tiny
is
hole
tiny.
in the wall.
It's the size of
couple hundred people.
And fond memory about that was he didn't take a break. It was 3 hours. He did not take a break, and he didn't even take a sip of water.
So that energy was still there.
Yeah, he's an animal. He's an interesting dude, but in his adolescence, he was a lot less polished.
Yeah, I mean, weren't we all, though? I mean, I don't know how polished I am now, but I'm sure I was less polished when I was 19.
Yeah.